New Zealand is often seen as a small yet powerful nation, one that's always been actively progressive, much faster than many other colonised countries. Of course, it still has its flaws and continues to face deep-rooted challenges. However, it will always be remembered as being the first country in the world to give women the right to vote. This early progression led to conversations centred on what the country cared about most: Indigenous rights, gender equality, and environmental conservation. But progress like this never comes easily. Every step forward in New Zealand's story has come from people willing to break down barriers, to challenge the system and rebuild a new one. And there's one major individual in particular that bridged and advocated for Indigenous, gender and sexual equality. Her name was Carmen Rupe. An army nurse, a performer, a business owner, a sex worker and an activist whose life changed how New Zealand and Australia saw gender and identity. Carmen was born as Trevor David on the 10th of October 1936 in Taumarunui, New Zealand. Raised in a family of 13, living with her mother Elsie Wilson and her father John Rupe. However, at the age of 5, Carmen's father John would commit suicide. Elsie quickly remarried, this time marrying John's brother. From early childhood, Trevor dreamed of a glamorous life and would often take females' clothes down to the creek to wear while nobody was around watching. At 15, Trevor would dance in a hula dress at a local concert. The crowd laughed, but this was the first time she felt free, and from then on, she was hooked. After leaving school, she worked in mills and hospitals, but just like many other teenagers, at 18, she was called into compulsory military training, a terrifying time in her life. She first trained in Papakura, but finished her training in Christchurch. After finishing the army training, all cadets were allowed to put on a concert. Carmen was chosen and took to the stage, lip-syncing to Eartha Kitt songs. By the late 1950s, Carmen longed for adventure. She would leave Auckland on a Friday in a boat and arrived in Sydney on a Monday. Staying at the YMCA on Pitt Street, she quickly discovered Sydney's underground gay scene near Hyde Park and King's Cross. Though this was a great hotspot for LGBTQ members, this was still the 1950s. And in Carmen's words, she stated that Australia wasn't as safe as New Zealand. Back home, they were more accepting of people of their own. Unable to find steady work because of discrimination, Carmen turned to sex work, just like many other transgender and gay people of the time. But police crackdowns were vicious. She recalled multiple times of being arrested, beaten down, and even stripped down naked and hosed down. She said if you were caught in a dress and a wig on a Friday, you would stay in a heterosexual male cells until Monday, beaten repeatedly for being different, and sexually assaulted because at the time society refused to see people that were different as real humans. She said the worst part wasn't the bumps and bruises. It was the humiliation of being paraded in court without makeup and a torn off wig, with a 5 o'clock shadow beaming through worn off makeup. To survive, she rented safe flats in King's Cross and Rose Bay, but when the violence became too unbearable, she would return home. But Sydney would always draw her back. She mentioned that she went back and forth between the two over 60 times. After years of performing and working as an escort, Carmen's life changed forever in January of 1966. That month, police charged her with behaving offensively. Her so-called act of crime was simply wearing a dress after an entertainment show. In court, the judge quickly dismissed this case, ruling that it was not illegal for a man to wear women's clothing in public, especially since Carmen had just finished performing and was on her way home. The verdict became a milestone for gender freedom in New Zealand. Carmen walked out of court smiling and vowed she'd never wear men's clothes ever again. From that day forward, she lived proudly as Carmen and even legally changed her name. Back in Wellington, she opened a coffee bar run by drag queens, trans women and gay men. It became a safe haven for people who didn't have one. Patrons used coded coffee cup signals to discreetly find companionship. Whilst police raids were frequent, Carmen installed hidden alarms under the counter to warn the staff whenever officers were approaching. Not long came The Balcony, a nightclub in Victoria Street. Egyptian-style murals, sequins, comedy, and cabaret. It was a world built from Carmen's imagination. She was the hostess, the star, and above all else, the protector of her community, gaining national fame. In 1975, she caused a political scandal by saying on television that some members of Parliament were gay or bisexual. Parliament demanded she'd appear before its Privileges Committee. She would arrive in a limousine wearing black lace and offered an apology that made national headlines. However, she always confirmed that her statement about the sexuality of politicians was never a lie. 2 years later, she would run for mayor of Wellington. Her campaign called for legalised brothels, gay law reform, and abortion rights. However, she never won. But her visibility reshaped what politics could really look like. The person who stepped in as mayor always conspired that she really did win. However, society at the time wasn't ready for a person like her. Her courage to run for mayor inspired a new generation, including Georgina Bayer, who later became the world's first openly transgender Member of Parliament. After closing her clubs in 1979, Carmen returned to Sydney. By then, attitudes slowly started to shift. The 1978 Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras protests marked the beginning of real change. In 1996, she was inducted to the Diva Hall of Fame, and in 2003, she received the Hero Lifetime Achievement Award. On December 15th of 2011, Carmen died of kidney failure at the age of 75. Her passing was mourned across both sides of the Tasman. Wellington honoured her with pedestrian lights in Cuba Street, showcasing her silhouette. Carmen lived through violence and prejudice, but never truly lost her glamour and shine. Carmen showed both New Zealand and Australia what courage looked like: tough, glamorous, and unforgettable.